What's up, guys and gals? Today we're going to work on a Shakespeare Alpha 2560. Cheap and reliable is what I would call this reel. Start with the top, unscrew the drag knob, pull that up. I'm going to leave that right there. Showing you how to break this down, service it, and reassemble it with some tips and tricks along the way. First thing we're going to do is remove the drag washers that are in here. I see a little bit of rust, which is never a good sign. But to do that, or to get it out, we're going to take a flathead screwdriver or a small one, stick that in the edge, get behind the spring, push in and up, and kind of work your way around. It's a very tight spring, so be careful. Now you can pull these washers out. More rust. Sweet. Alright, we'll leave that alone for a second. Now we'll work on the clicker. And the way we remove this is simply undoing this screw right here. Then you have those three pieces that go together. I think I have some washers that I can probably replace this with. Yeah, I think I do. I'll have to check. But for the metal washers, I don't. I may have that as well, but I'm just going to show you how to clean these things off. I'll show you what I would do to clean them off. So I would take that. It's kind of like a Brillo sort of pad sort of thing. And this is a 4/0 steel wool. I may even use a wire brush. We'll start with this. Kind of want to avoid these things because then you create little pits in the metal, but sometimes you don't have much of a choice. So just take this, kind of run over it, and you're slowly trying to reduce any impressions or indentations or raised ends that may be on this, and that feels pretty smooth as it is. You don't need to get rid of the colors per se, but getting it flat is your goal here, and that's what I would do with these. Let me pause the camera, get this cleaned up. I'm going to use some Corrosion X. Show you what I'll do. Just spray that in there. Kind of just works on the rust that's inside there. Clean that out with paper towel and or Q-tips. And I think that's probably about it for this section of the reel. I'll be right back to you guys. Alright, so I went with an HT100 drag washer. It was about the same size and the same thickness as the those other washers that were in there. That number is a 56/710, so 56/710 if you're wondering what it was. And for these I am going to grease them, and the reason I'm going to grease these because I was not going to, or I probably wouldn't normally, is because of the pitting and anomalies on those metal washers. Notice I'm just putting a light coat of grease on these things. And I'll show you what I'm using at the end to grease these washers. Just a light coat, but you want to make sure you fill all the spots in. And the grease I was using is Cal's Universal Grease. Now we're just going to drop these in. First goes in one of those washers. Let's stick in this one. And you'll notice that the hole inside these are larger than the holes in the originals. That doesn't really matter per se. What matters is the surface area that it covers inside. Next, HT100 drag washer. That eared washer fits into those two little slots there. Final HT100, and then your final keyed washer, metal washer. To get this retaining ring back in, you angle it down, find the channel it's supposed to be in, and then work your finger around by pushing it in. Again, this one is tight, so be careful with it. When you get it all the way in, make sure you check to see that it's in the ridge or in the groove that it should be in, which this one is. Alright, so for the clicker, you notice on this click spring, there's a little dip in that spring right there. That dip will be facing down like so. First thing we're going to put on is the click tongue, which will be sitting, looking just like this. Then we'll take our spring and lay that over it. Remember, the tine's facing down. Just going to drop it down. I'm going to set it up and show you what it looks like. That is the end result. And all we're going to do is just screw this in to support it. After you screw it down, make sure you check this, because if you went too far, it may not work properly. That works well. There's an O or opening on the click spring that needs to go over the post on this side. Now we can add some oil to that. Kind of work that in. Add some grease here if you want, but I would probably only recommend using this reel in the fresh water. And you can also do some here if you wanted to. Now let's go ahead and access the rotor. Before we do it, we're going to remove the handle. This one happens to be a screw-on handle, but a lot of them are pass-through, meaning they have like a hex kind of pattern that you just stick right through the main gear. Now to access the rotor, we're going to remove this stack right here, but just by rocking and pulling up. Removing that screw. That's what I thought. I couldn't remember if that came up or not. Just pull this up, and if it doesn't come up, who cares? Just go ahead and undo the nut that's below it. I think it's lefty-loosey to remove this. Yeah, lefty-loosey to remove it. That metal piece you see under there is the support or lock washer for that rotor nut. Now to get this up, you just kind of rock and pull up at the same time. Now we can pop this out. Not that we need to, but. And we're going to open this up. Notice under here there's some ridges inside the rotor. That acts as the anti-reverse ratchet. Alright, so let's open this side to show you that there's nothing under there. Take that off. And both those screws on each side should be the same. Remove that. So let's remove that top bail arm screw first. Now when you do this, it may pop up on you. That's fine. It is what it is. If it doesn't, just kind of take your hand over there, slowly lift it up, and keep your hand kind of all around it so nothing shoots out on you. And we're good. Now we can open this up. These two are the same size. And that's the setup. Lift that up gently so you take the load off of it, and you can pull that out. Then you have the trip arm, and that's it. And these two pieces go together. When you put this back in, notice that this is already curving. We're going to keep it the same in the same position so that we can not overstress this by turning it some other direction. Last piece would be the line roller, and there's only a few pieces under here that we need to worry about. You have the screw, you have a washer or a collar that sits right there. Line roller, and there's a bushing inside of it. I'll show you what this looks like so you can see it. That's the setup of how the line roller should be situated, looking like that. And there's only one way for this bushing to go in, so if you were to get lost, just know that the bushing comes from the bail wire into the line roller. And the way that would sit inside there is on this side, looking like that. It cannot go in on this side. Well, that might not be true. That's the way it's supposed to look going in. That's all you need to know. All right, let's get this cleaned up with the same kind of process that we did for the spool. I'm gonna clean it up with also including a toothbrush along with the other stuff like the Q-tips and whatever else that we use. All right, I'll see you guys in a bit. Okay, we're back. Let's go ahead and grease some spots in here first. That channel where that trip arm is gonna go, along there where that spring rides, around the post. Don't need any inside there, but I do it anyhow. We can grease this part just because. Grease that post right there where it goes inside the bail arm. Inside here. Don't know why. Around that little thingamajiggy right there. Inside that hole where that piece is going to go. And where else did I want to grease? I didn't grease it. Up inside here. We could do around here as well. Now let's go ahead and put this in, and I did forget to grease it. Just kind of a light coat. Just like that. I'm going to drop this in place. That long arm is going to be facing down, looking like that. Push this all the way to the top so it rides high. Take this, put this together, kind of like that. I'm just going to lay it there. Leave that alone for a second. Now let's hop to this really quickly. I'll put some grease around here, some inside that hole. And for this, you can grease or oil it. I'm going to grease it. But like I said, this is probably going to be used in fresh water and nothing more than that. So oil will definitely work. Set that aside. Now we're going to take the bushing. Stick that on there. You can add a little bit of grease just to the outside of it. Take the line roller. Remember looking like that. Let's see if you can see it so you make sure you know what you're doing. Pop that on there. And now we're going to take this collar right here, grease inside of it, grease on the back side of it, stick it over like that, balance this over it, like so, and then just screw it in. We're not going to go all the way down yet. We're just going to kind of leave it where you can still move it around a little bit. Now we're going to take this, find that hole right there. That hole's going to go over this thing. So looking like that. Keep your hand over this section. Push down and rotate as you do it. And now that's set in place. It's not going to go anywhere. It is kind of scary, and I might get some comments about it, but nothing really happens. Just kind of stays there. However, I'm going to secure this first before putting the bail spring cover on. Now we take this, drop that on over it, and then we can screw that in. This side, just stick it on there and screw it in. There's nothing more to do on this side. When I'm screwing this in, I'm looking for the original groove for the threads of the screw to follow. If it feels too tight, I kind of back it out and find the one that it should, or the path of least resistance is what I'm looking for. And then same thing for this one. Now all we have left to to do is just add some grease to certain points around there in the bottom, inside that channel, and up here in the top. Alright, let's do the housing. We're going to remove those 4 screws on the outside to get this cover off so we can access the gears. All these housing screws should be the same size. I lay them out like that, just kind of the way I'm looking at it, just in case they're different sizes and these are not. This should just pop straight up, but sometimes it may get stuck. We might be stuck right here. Pull and pull and pull. All right. Now I'm going to undo that screw right there in the block. Pull that shaft out, like so. Pull the gear out. Get that block out of there. And now we can remove that transfer, that crosswind gear. Was there anything under here? I don't remember. I don't think so. I think that was it. Now let's go ahead and get the pinion and the anti-reverse dog out of there. To do that, we're going to open that E-clip up right there. I'm going to pop that E-clip off by sticking one end of the screwdriver inside the gap and twisting off. Before I pull that up, I'm going to pull this actuator, that piece right there, off, and now I can pull this off. I'll do those 2 screws so we can get the pinion gear and the bearing out of there. Pull straight up, like so. You have the cover, the bearing, and the gear. Let's pop this out of there. So this is the bushing for the main gear. Sometimes what happens, this is a plastic cover, so that kind of shrinks or warps and this gets stuck in there, so we might end up having to force that back inside here when we go to put the reel back together. Last piece would be this actuator here for the anti-reverse. Where you get that off is to remove that screw. And for the bushing on the other side, it'll be the same deal. It may be warped, so we might have to force it out. Undid that screw there. We're going to pull that metal piece up. I'm going a little fast here, but you should be careful with this. Keep it in the up position, because then you're avoiding that ridge that would add more tension to it. Pull that up. Now we're going to take this, push that arm, this arm down, just comes out like that. And now all you have to do is kind of maneuver this slightly at an angle and then pull out. Notice the direction it was in. That's that for that. Let's get this out of here so you guys can see it. See if it's stuck also. No, that one came up pretty good. That's good. Alright, that's it. I'm going to leave that plate in there. It's just you taking that off. You don't need to remove it. Alright, get this cleaned up. Come back to you guys in a sec. Alright, welcome back. First thing we're going to do is grease a few spots on here. Add some grease to right there where that bearing is going to go. Around that post where that dog sits. Inside here for that bushing on the bottom. Around that post right there. A little bit on the outside. Some under here. Some along that ridge right there. Around there. Some along this hole right here. That's where that actuator for the anti-reverse will be going through. Some inside here where the switch goes. I think that's probably it. And the same thing on this side over here. A little bit of grease for where that bushing goes. Alright, so the first thing we're going to put in would be the pinion stack. Let's get that. We're going to oil that bearing. I'm using Real X oil. I'm going to work that in like so. Go ahead and grease this pinion gear. And I do a decent amount on these older reels. I really do just kind of lather it on there. Not overkill, but I want to make sure I get all the surface area of it layered with some grease along the threads. Like that. And maybe some inside there as well. We can also grease this shaft. I like to grease especially here where it goes inside with the block, or interacts with the block, excuse me. But you can also do it up and down like this. Just kind of rub with your fingers. First thing I'm going to put in is one of these bushings. You don't need to oil it or grease it. I'm going to add a little bit of grease on the inside, and then I'm going to use the residual just to kind of work it around it to give it a layer of protection. Drop it inside like that. I do that just in case I forget to put it in afterwards. That's the only reason I do it. Then we take the stack, put it together like that, drop it in, and then we're going to cover it up with this bearing cover. Now on the bearing cover, you'll notice that there's a kind of a flat side to it. That flat side is going to be kind of situated like this along that flat edge that's right there as well. Before I put it on there, I am going to put a layer of grease for my fingers on it also. Then I'm going to just lay that down and screw it in. Same deal as any of these other screws are going into the housing. Find a path of least resistance and then use that. Snug is good. Don't over tighten these things. Now we can take this. If you were to separate this, notice that there's a thicker end on the bottom and recessed as well than on the top. I'm not going to take it out. I'm just going to grease around it. And this is actually not the first thing I'm going to put in. I'm going to put in the dog part first. But let's go ahead and get this greased up. Some along that channel where this actuator rides. And then for the dog, we do grease it as well, just to have a layer of protection on it. That should work. Now let's take this, drop it on. The way it's going to look is like this. And I'll show you after I put it on, just like that. This goes down over it like this. Pull this in because that end right there is going to go inside that opening. So like so. Didn't get it yet. There we go. Looking like that. Now we can take our E-clip and secure it. I'm going to use my flathead screwdriver to do it. I hope I don't break anything while I do that. And you can use the pliers if you wanted to. I just prefer the flathead screwdriver for most applications. Alright, so that's that. We're going to save this probably. I think we'll do it now. We'll do it now. Going to put this in. Light amount of grease on top of it, just all over. Like so. We're gonna angle that down. We're gonna go through here kind of like this, up and over that. That post is gonna sit on right there. End up looking like that. Now we're gonna take this piece. There's a little bar in the middle that's gonna go inside that gap right there. First thing you want to note is that there's a shorter end. If you kind of look at that, there's a shorter end up here, longer end down here. That short end will be facing up in this direction. So we're just gonna hold on to this, stick this through like that, and that's it. And before I screw this one in, I'm gonna take this bar here, and there's only one way to put this bar in. If you put it in the wrong way, it'll be very loose. We're gonna put it in with those prongs or those bends facing down on the outside. There's a little slot or channel that you can find on top of this thing. I'm gonna push it all the way to the top, find the channel, and then push it down over it. Make sure it's seated as far down as it can go. And this one is. Then we can secure it with the screw. And what you can double check is it's on the outside, it's on the inside of that dog. So notice if you do it this way, the dog can't engage. If you pop it up, the dog is engaged. All right, and now we're gonna do the block, crosswind gear, and the drive gear, the main gear. I'm gonna fast forward through the stuff, but basically what I'm gonna do is same thing I did for the pinion gear, but also grease the entire surface area of all these parts. I'm going to add a decent amount of grease inside that groove right there. And that's it. Now first we'll put the crosswind gear on. I'm going to have that post sitting towards the bottom somewhere like that. To get this gear or the crosswind block in, we're going to take it, kind of angle it down like that, having it look like such. Now we can take our drive gear, drop that in, looking like that, and sticking our shaft through to where it meets up with the block. There's a flat side, that flat side will be facing up, then we can secure it. Securing it with the screw. And since we had trouble with this this bushing going on, we're going to take it and push it into the side housing versus on top of the main gear. So I'm going to force that in there. Push it all the way down. Take our washer for the drive gear, stick it on over it. Then we can cover that up. Make sure it pops into place like it just did there. And we're going to take our screws and secure it. Snug them down, but don't over tighten these. Again, this is plastic. We don't want to make it, we don't want to shred the insides there. Alright, let's clean something up I saw here. Take our rotor, kind of get that on there. Make sure it works fine. Put on that collar, or sorry, that washer there. It's keyed, so you have to find the slot for the slot over the pinion to get it down. Secure with the screw, and just snug this down. A decent snug will work. Some grease for my fingers. key this over it, and then we're going to take this screw and lock it in place. Like so. We can put our cap on. Take our washer. That metal washer goes first. Drop it down over it. Then these other washers, whatever number is on there, that's where you're pushing back on. You gotta kind of force them down. For the handle, we're just gonna brush some parts off on it. Just right there like that. Add some grease to right there, or on the back side, on this side, and some of the threads, kind of like that. Now for the knob, we can take some oil, drop it in there, there, and some around there, and then work it in. Alright, so let's put the spool on. Alright, let's test this reel out, make sure it works well. Let's put some grease around there. Drop the knob on. First we'll test the drag out, see how that feels. I suspect it'll feel nice, but who knows. Yeah, that feels good. Test out the crank. Nice. No anti-reverse. Let's engage it. Let's see the bail flip. Nice. Alright guys, if you found the video useful, please hit that thumbs up button. If you appreciate content like this, please just consider subscribing to the channel and spread the word about it as well. I will see you guys next time.